Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and I am back with more PlayStation 1 hidden gems. I was looking back through my previous videos, and so far I've covered at least 31 hidden gems on the system, and as you can see, it covers a bunch of ground, but there are tons more to choose from, so without further ado, let's get to it. The first game I want to talk about is so killer. It is Future Cop LAPD. In this game, you play as a cop in the future, where Los Angeles is a completely lawless wasteland, and you pilot a mech designed to kill all the bad guys. Now, this mech can transform with just a button press into a mech that walks on two legs or drives around in a car. But as you can see by this footage, you just cruise around in the third person, shooting bad guys, taking out turrets, battling tanks, and a ton more. And right off the bat, I noticed that the auto-targeting system works really well, bouncing from one enemy to the next. And honestly, if that doesn't work in a game like this, it can ruin it instantly. But again, here, it just works really well. And I like how the game has you changing between your machine guns and your rockets all the time, because you're either in close combat or in direct sight of an enemy, or maybe you need to shoot something that is sitting on a rooftop. And again, you're just going back and forth. It's very cool. And occasionally you're going to be rescuing hostages as well as completing other mission objectives. And I'm digging these graphics. They look and run really good on the PlayStation 1. By the way, the game mixes up the gameplay a bit because some levels actually play more like a MOBA, like a top-down strategy game. This is definitely a cool game, a total surprise, and absolutely a hidden gem. Next up is Assault Rigs, and this is yet another one of these futuristic shooting games where you control a tank that kind of reminds me something out of the movie Tron. However, this game sets itself apart from previous games I've mentioned because the level design is not quite as open as some of the others. Some of the other games I've mentioned, in the past, there'll be battles in arenas that are fairly open, but as you can see here, this game has more of a closed-in maze feel to it. You're going down corridors and things like that. And that's what makes this game really fun, because it requires you to stay on your toes, because you're exploring the environment, trying to find these gems to complete the level, but then you also have to do combat, and you really have to pay attention to where you're going, where you need to be. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And this game is massive. There are 42 levels to explore, so again, you're going to be getting your money's worth here. The only thing I'm not really crazy about in this game is that the tanks can be a bit tricky to navigate down those tight corridors. Also, the camera sometimes can not be showing you what you need to see, and so sometimes you can get a little bit turned around or lost. But again, exploration is the fun part of this game, so if you can deal with that, you're going to have a great time with it. And this game came out on the Sega Saturn as well as MS-DOS, but I haven't played those versions, so if you have, let me know down in the comments below. Alright, next up is a game I am excited to talk about. This is Kudelka. So Kudelka is a Japanese RPG that mixes turn-based combat with Resident Evil style exploration and puzzle solving. And the whole premise of this game is that you're exploring a haunted monastery, trying to figure out what happened in its past and, well, why the caretakers want you dead. And so this game really is like Resident Evil, where it has those pre-rendered backgrounds, and then you move a character around, exploring the area, picking up items, talking to people. And then what's interesting about it is that it also has RPG elements in it. So you have random battles. And those battles are turn-based on a grid, and then you have 1 to 3 characters in your party. And if you played a Japanese RPG, you're going to feel very at home here, because you can move your character, you can attack, you can do magic, you can use items, you can wait, you can do all those things. Now, I typically do like turn-based combat, and I do enjoy it in this game, but I did feel it's a bit slow, at least by today's standards. I think it's because the CD is accessing a little bit. There's definitely a little bit of delay between animations and moving between characters. So again, not a big deal, but just be aware. And there's definitely a sense of creepiness in this game, as the levels and even the combat arena is really dark. You can see it here. I mean, sometimes the enemies are really hard to see themselves. Sometimes they're just like a blob with eyes. It's very, very cool. The enemies are definitely bizarre and disturbing, and some of them are just plain haunting. Now, I guess a sequel was planned but never happened, so instead the developers of this game went on to make the excellent Shadow Heart series on the PS2. By the way, a word of warning for you physical collectors out there, this game can fetch a ton of money online for a complete copy, so just be aware. I'm not sure if it's actually available on the PlayStation Network or not, because that would be optimal for sure, because yeah, it's a pricey game, but it's pretty cool. All right, guys, you know that I love my shoot 'em ups, and here we have Night Raid. This is a Japanese-only shoot 'em up that really reminds me of games like, say, Mars Matrix or maybe Gigawing. And as you can see by the gameplay footage, it is a top-down vertical style shooter where there are just a ton of things going on, lots of things to shoot, lots of things to kill you, but that's how I like these games. Notice that you have a special launch attack that bounces around this huge ball between enemies to create combos. Now, while I was capturing this footage, I was never quite sure if that was something I was controlling or it was just happening in front of me, because again, this game is so chaotic. I wasn't exactly sure, if I was doing something or not, but yeah, it was definitely cool to watch. Now, one thing that's not great about this game is that you do have a little bit of floaty controls, although I do like that you can switch between either the analog thumbstick or the D-pad controls if you wish. And so sometimes I would be using the thumbstick to get around, and other times whenever there's just tons of bullets on the screen, I'm trying to barely survive, I would use the D-pad, and I found that that worked much better in those kind of tight situations. Now again, this is probably not the best shoot 'em up on the PlayStation 1 because there are a ton of great ones, but if you are a fan of the genre like me, give it a go. Here's a game that was a total surprise. This is Bugs Bunny and Taz Time Busters. So as you can see by this footage, this is a 3D platforming game that's going to remind you of some of the best that are on the PS1, like your Spyros, your Ape Escapes, your Crash Bandicoots, things like that. And again, what's really surprising about this is that it's a licensed game. 99% of the time, those type of games are crap, but you can tell that whoever made this knew what they're doing. This is a great game. And as you can see here, you play as Bugs Bunny as well as the Tasmanian Devil, and what you're trying to do is find these pieces to a time machine that are scattered throughout different eras. Now, the way you do that is pretty cool because the game has you swapping between Bugs Bunny and Taz constantly, as each character has specific moves and abilities. For instance, Bugs Bunny can go underground, but he needs a hole to jump into, but sometimes there's not one there, so you switch over to Taz, who can spin really fast and drill one for him. And then Bugs can leap into the air and then dive into a hole and then burrow underground and solve puzzles. Bugs Bunny can also pick up items and throw them to solve puzzles. He can leap into the air and then spin his bunny ears so he can kind of float to the ground. He can also sneak. And then Taz is really strong and he can push things, and he's also fast enough to raise some of the platforms, again, to solve puzzles. At its heart, this game is a total collectathon where you're basically just going around trying to find gears, scattered throughout these massive levels. But it's a joy to play this game, and as you can see here, it's got really solid graphics. The controls are really great. The puzzles are super fun. It's got full voice acting. So yeah, I mean, this looks like a kiddie game, and maybe it is, but it's extremely well made and should not be overlooked. Next up is a game called TRAG, and that stands for Tactical Rescue Assault Group. Now, this game is also called Hard Edge in other areas. In this game, you play as a special ops group that is fighting to take back this building that has been overrun with terrorists, all while trying to rescue a prominent scientist. And as you're looking at this gameplay footage here, you can tell that this is a Resident Evil inspired adventure game, complete with those awkward tank controls where you either love them or hate them, but I eventually do get used to them. I never quite like them, but they're not that bad. And with the pre-rendered backgrounds and the way that the cameras switch your view, you always have to deal with that kind of questionable weapon aiming. Again, not my favorite, but if you're used to the early Resident Evil games, you'll feel right at home here. And it's got pretty decent graphics and good voice acting. So again, if you like those kind of Resident Evil style games and you haven't played this one, check it out. Next up is a game called Eggs of Steel. This is also called Hello Charlie in Japan if you're looking for imports. And as you can see here, this is a platforming slash puzzle game with pre-rendered graphics or sprites that perhaps is a bit of a throwback to an earlier era. You know, you used to get these a lot on the Super Nintendo with games like Donkey Kong Country. In this game, you play as Charlie, who is an egg. I'm not 100% sure why he's an egg, but you just have to go with it here. But he is working the night shift, trying to run a steel mill, and he's not really paying attention. He's kind of goofing off a little bit, and a mishap happens, and basically the entire mill just kind of starts going out of control. And so he needs to try to fix things and just make them right. And the way you do that is with some good old-fashioned platforming and puzzle solving. Now, thankfully, this game does have really good controls, and honestly, it's really fun. This is actually a really well-made game, and just kind of over-the-top atmosphere. There's a sense of silliness about the whole thing. Of course, you are playing an egg, you know, named Charlie. I will say that the level design is a little bit frustrating because you can kind of get yourself killed fairly easily, but I guess that's all part of the old-school fun. So if you like platforming games and you have a PS1, this is a good one that not a lot of people talk about. Here's a game that has kind of a funny name called Brahma Force: The Assault on Beltlogger 9. Who came up with that? Well, I was curious about the name, and so basically Brahma stands for Bipedal Robotic Assault Heavy Mechanized Armor Suit. Brahma. Okay. All you need to know that this is a futuristic mech game in the first person. So it really plays like a first person shooter, but again, you are in a mech. And immediately this reminded me of MechWarrior 2 on the PC, if you've ever played that. And like in any good mech game, you can upgrade your mech, upgrade your weapons, and basically use it to blow everything up. And I will say, I am really impressed with the graphics on this, especially for the PlayStation 1. It runs extremely well. And so what you do in this game is cruise around in your mech, battling robots and things that are trying to kill you, all while trying to rescue these colonists. And this game is no joke when it comes to difficulty. Basically, there are just swarms of these enemies trying to kill you at all times. And so you need to be very methodical and very thoughtful when you play this game. You can't just run in guns blazing, especially the first couple times you play it, because you're just not going to be anticipating where they are, and you're going to get yourself killed a lot. But this game is pretty cool. I mean, I have a soft spot for these type of mech games, and it's cool that the PlayStation 1 has one like this. So yeah, definitely check it out. Next up is a game called Tunnel B1, and I get the sense that this game didn't sell very well, and honestly, it's probably because of the name. That sounds like just a B title. That sounds like shovelware. I mean, what does Tunnel B1 mean? But honestly, this is a pretty cool game. As you can see by the gameplay footage, we have another first-person shooting game here that feels like it's part driving game and also part run-and-gun shooter. And basically what you're doing here is cruising around these tunnels, shooting bad guys, tripping switches to unlock doors, and picking up power-ups. So it's all pretty basic, pretty standard stuff. And I have to say, it's kind of weird that they have this extremely low point of view. It's almost kind of off-putting at first, but you definitely do get used to it. And essentially what you're doing is going through these tunnels trying to unlock doors and get to the end of the level. And at first glance, this almost does look like a racing game, but it's not, because you have to be way more methodical in your shooting if you just want to barely survive. And the controls are a little weird, little floaty. I mean, it definitely feels like you are on some sort of futuristic hovercraft, but you do eventually get used to them. And this is another one of those games that has that old school difficulty where you really need to plan out where you're going, pick up all your power-ups, conserve your ammo, also your health. So it's definitely a tough game, but it's pretty cool and it's very addictive. Alright guys, that's some more PlayStation 1 hidden gems coming at you, but man, there are so many great games on that system. I could do this all day, and I think I just might. I think I might have another video in me, so be on the lookout for that. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you so much for subscribing, and take care.